The bitter cold of December 16, 1944, cut through the Schnee-Eifel forest along the Belgian-German border. Obergefreiter Zimmermann's frozen fingers worked methodically, trying to divide 6 cigarettes among 8 men. The mathematics was brutal. 6 cigarettes, 8 hungry faces watching him in the pre-dawn darkness. Somewhere beyond the tree line, American artillery thundered and cracked, shaking snow from the branches above. His squad had been told special rations would arrive for Hitler's final gamble in the Ardennes, the offensive that was supposed to change everything. Yet here they stood, rationing cigarettes like beggars dividing scraps of bread. The irony tasted bitter as the cold air. About 20 meters away, hidden deeper in the forest, lay something that would haunt Zimmermann's thoughts for weeks to come. An American soldier from yesterday's fighting. Dead now, stiff and frozen. But his pockets held treasures beyond imagination. 3 full packs of Lucky Strikes, 60 cigarettes, more than Zimmermann's entire company had seen in months. The dead man also carried chocolate bars, chewing gum, instant coffee. Luxuries that seemed to belong to another world entirely. What Zimmermann couldn't possibly know was the machinery grinding thousands of miles away across the Atlantic. American factories producing 290 billion cigarettes annually just for their armed forces. Hershey alone manufacturing 24 million chocolate bars every single week. Nothing but military rations. The mathematics of abundance versus desperation was being written not in command headquarters, but in soldiers' pockets. A pack of cigarettes had become a prophecy. Abundance whispered of inevitable defeat. The German ration system existed mostly on paper. Officially, each soldier received what should have been adequate. 750 grams of bread, 45 grams of butter or fat, 120 grams of sausage or cheese, 200 grams of meat when available, and theoretically 7 cigarettes or 2 cigars daily. But the regulations capped soldiers at no more than 6 free cigarettes per day, a cap that became meaningless as supplies evaporated. This allocation, established back in 1939, had been slashed repeatedly as Germany's fortunes collapsed. Even the theoretical ration exposed a fundamental blindness about industrial warfare. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann served with the 352nd Infantry Division in Normandy. He wrote in his diary that May, his sergeant, Lacht, had laughed when asked about cigarette rations. 6 per day, the man said. They'd actually received 6 per week for the past 2 months. And those were captured French cigarettes from 1940. Stale. They crumbled to dust when you lit them. Historian Robert N. Proctor's research in German archives revealed something striking. By 1944, a Wehrmacht survey of 1,000 servicemen found 87% smoked regularly. Yet consumption had actually dropped 23.4% from before the war due to shortages. 2/3 of Germany's tobacco factories had shut down by 1942, converted to making weapons. The SS, despite leadership that officially despised smoking, gave its combat units just 1.5 cigarettes daily, 6 cigarettes per 4-day field ration. The justification was that cigarettes steadied nerves before combat. The American K-ration, by contrast, represented industrial efficiency perfected. Each daily ration contained 3 meal units. Each unit packed 3,500 calories, but more than calories came inside: 4 cigarettes per meal unit, 12 total per day. Fresh brands like Camel, Lucky Strike, Chesterfield, Philip Morris, all packaged in waterproof cellophane with matches included. Alongside the cigarettes came 2-ounce chocolate bars initially, then split into 2 1-ounce portions. Chewing gum, 2 sticks, instant coffee, sugar tablets, even toilet paper. Major Robert Johnson of the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps wrote in a 1944 report. He explained that cigarettes and confectionery served purposes beyond comfort. These items maintained morale, they provided quick energy, they served as universal currency in liberated territories. Johnson calculated the daily comfort items cost 47 cents per soldier. A price, he noted, that America could afford to pay 11 million times daily. The numbers told 2 completely different stories about 2 completely different economies. In 1943, American tobacco companies had pledged total support to the war. They were producing cigarettes at volumes that would have seemed like fantasy to German planners. American Tobacco alone manufactured 75 billion cigarettes annually. R.J. Reynolds added another 60 billion. Liggett and Myers contributed 50 billion more. These companies had transformed their entire operations into military supply. Civilian markets became afterthoughts. Soldiers could buy extra cigarettes at military stores for just 50 cents per carton or 5 cents per pack. Germany's entire cigarette production in 1944 totaled roughly 40 billion. The Wehrmacht competed with 80 million civilians for every single one. The mathematics were devastating. America produced 7.25 cigarettes for every German cigarette, while supporting a military force drowning in supplies, and a civilian population still enjoying relative comfort. Hauptmann Friedrich Becker, a staff officer captured in Italy, testified to American interrogators after the war. They calculated everything, he said. Ammunition, fuel, tanks. We never calculated cigarettes and chocolate. We should have. Those items told the real story of who would win. The chocolate differential proved even more revealing. Hershey's military production reached 24 million bars weekly at peak capacity. This exceeded Germany's entire confectionery industry output. The company had specifically designed the D-bar for military use. 4 ounces of chocolate mixed with oat flour, able to withstand temperatures up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. 600 calories in a pocket-sized package. Between 1940 and 1945, Hershey produced over 3 billion chocolate bars for the military. They won the Army-Navy E-Production Award 5 times. Milton Hershey himself had made a declaration. The American soldier will fight better, knowing he has chocolate in his pocket. It's a taste of home, a moment of comfort in hell. We'll make sure he never runs out. On the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht was being ground to dust, the situation had collapsed entirely by 1943. Gefreiter Hans Müller served with the 6th Army before Stalingrad. He wrote to his sister in October 1942 about cigarettes. They received their 6 cigarettes perhaps twice per week. When they captured Russian positions, they searched the dead bodies not for intelligence, but for machorka, rough tobacco. They rolled it in newspaper from Pravda itself. Soviet propaganda serving German lungs. The irony haunted them. Here they were, the supposed master race, reduced to smoking Soviet peasant tobacco, wrapped in communist newspapers. While American soldiers, portrayed in Nazi propaganda as soft and decadent, carried multiple packs of quality cigarettes as standard equipment. The humiliation cut deeper than any military defeat. Feldwebel Kurt Weber of the 4th Panzer Army recorded an incident from January 1943 that captured the absurdity. They overran an American supply depot that had been airdropped for the Russians. Lend-Lease supplies, Spam, Maxwell House coffee, Lucky Strikes, Hershey bars. The Americans were supplying their Soviet allies better than Germany supplied its own troops. Officers fought among themselves over chocolate bars while opening crates that each contained more cigarettes than their entire regiment had received in 3 months. Lend-Lease had indeed shipped billions of cigarettes to the Soviet Union, along with 70,000 tons of processed food, chocolate, coffee. American industrial capacity was simultaneously supplying its own forces abundantly, while providing allies with luxuries the Wehrmacht could only fantasize about. The Italian campaign from 1943 to 1944 gave German soldiers their first sustained exposure to American abundance. As forces retreated northward, they encountered American supply lines operating on principles that seemed to defy logic. Oberleutnant Joachim Richter served with the 1st Fallschirmjäger Division near Monte Cassino. He wrote in February 1944, "The Americans shell us with more artillery ammunition in 1 hour than we receive in a week. But worse for morale," he wrote, "is what we find in their destroyed positions. Discarded chocolate wrappers, empty cigarette cartons, half-eaten cans of food. They throw away more than we receive." The psychological impact intensified when German soldiers stumbled upon captured American supply dumps. Unlike German depots, carefully hidden and desperately guarded, American supplies seemed endless and almost casually managed. A single American quartermaster truck might contain more comfort items than a German battalion received in a month. Fighter pilot Franz Hartmann recalled discovering an abandoned American supply point near Anzio. Hundreds of cases of K rations, each box containing cigarettes and chocolate. They calculated the contents of that one supply point, apparently considered minor by the Americans, held more cigarettes than their entire division had received since arriving in Italy. Men filled their pockets, their bread bags, their gas mask containers with Lucky Strikes and Hershey bars. For 2 weeks, they smoked American cigarettes. When they ran out and received their allocation of 6 per day, several men actually broke down crying. D-Day brought this supply disparity into devastating focus. As Allied forces poured onto the beaches, they brought logistics on a scale that redefined military supply. Operation Overlord involved not just combat supplies, but millions of comfort rations. In the first week alone, 14 million cigarettes and 800,000 chocolate bars landed on Normandy beaches. Grenadier Joseph Wagner of the 21st Panzer Division encountered American paratrooper supplies scattered across the Norman countryside. Every American soldier seemed to have fallen from the sky with a personal tobacco shop. They found containers with cartons of cigarettes. Actual cartons. Each American paratrooper carried more cigarettes than his company received in a month. The chocolate was everywhere, some type that didn't melt in the heat. Their emergency iron ration, meanwhile, was a tin of meat that might have been canned in 1941. The stark contrast demoralized defenders. Heinrich Schmidt of the 352nd Infantry Division reported something that reflected wider despair. His men increasingly volunteered for patrols, not for military intelligence, but to search American bodies for cigarettes and chocolate. A dead American provides more comfort items than the German supply system. This is not warfare, it's wealthy men fighting porters. The American replacement system compounded the psychological blow. As German units dissolved from casualties and shortages, fresh American troops arrived daily, each carrying full rations, each including their cigarette and chocolate allocations. Germans watched enemies discard half-empty cigarette packs because they were too crushed, while their own soldiers carefully straightened bent cigarettes found in mud. Major Karl von Rundstedt, serving as supply officer for Panzer Lehr Division, calculated impossible mathematics in his journal. Each American division in Normandy consumed approximately 130,000 cigarettes daily. That single division smoked more than 3 German divisions combined, and those were assuming full allocation, which they hadn't received in 2 years. The chocolate disparity carried particular psychological weight. In German culture, chocolate represented luxury, celebration, childhood joy. By 1944, German civilians hadn't seen real chocolate in years. Ersatz chocolate made from roasted barley and artificial flavoring sold for exorbitant prices on black markets. Real chocolate had become memory, yet American soldiers treated chocolate as mundane, disposable even. The D-bars were designed to taste little better than boiled potato. Later tropical chocolate bars were formulated to resist melting. By late 1944, K rations included commercial candy bars like Milky Way and Mars. Torrid zone bars specially created for heat resistance. Gefreiter Paul Zimmermann discovered an American position in the Hurtgen forest. Chocolate bar wrappers everywhere, some with bites taken, then discarded. His hands shook as he gathered them, licking remaining chocolate from inside the wrappers like a dog. He hadn't tasted real chocolate since 1941. These Americans threw away what his children would consider a dream. The American military chocolate program represented industrial might applied to morale. Hershey wasn't alone. Mars produced millions of specialty bars weekly. Nestle contributed millions more. The Quartermaster Corps had determined chocolate provided optimal calories-to-weight ratio while offering psychological comfort transcending simple nutrition. Colonel James Harrison explained in a 1944 memo, "A soldier eating chocolate doesn't feel like he's at war for that moment. He's home. He's human. He's cared for by his nation." This psychological effect multiplies combat effectiveness beyond any caloric calculation. German soldiers increasingly recognized what their own system lacked. The Wehrmacht treated soldiers as tools requiring minimum maintenance. The American military treated soldiers as humans deserving comfort, even in war. This philosophical difference, made tangible in chocolate bars and cigarette packs, eroded German morale more effectively than any propaganda ever could. By late 1944, American cigarettes had become universal currency in German-occupied territories. A single pack of Lucky Strikes could buy a chicken. A carton could purchase a bicycle. German soldiers increasingly found themselves using meager pay to buy American cigarettes from French or Belgian black marketeers. Cigarettes that had been discarded or traded by American soldiers who had too many. Obergefreiter Hans Dietrich wrote from Belgium in September 1944, "The ultimate humiliation was buying American cigarettes with German marks from Belgian farmers. Farmers who received them free from American soldiers. One pack cost more than his daily pay. The Americans handed them out to children as gifts. This economic reality reflected broader supply catastrophe. Germany's war economy, despite Albert Speer's production miracles, could barely maintain weapons and ammunition production. Luxury items like cigarettes and chocolate had been sacrificed for total war. America's economy, operating at unprecedented capacity, produced both implements of war and comforts of peace simultaneously. The statistics were damning. In 1944, America produced 500,000 military trucks, 96,000 aircraft, 17,000 tanks, and 290 billion cigarettes. Germany managed 40,000 trucks, 25,000 aircraft, 8,000 tanks, and 40 billion cigarettes. Most of those reserved for civilians to maintain home-front morale. The ratios told everything. America could afford comfort. Germany could barely afford survival. The American supply system, delivering cigarettes and chocolate to frontline troops, represented logistics elevated to art form. From factory to foxhole, the system operated with choreographed precision that German officers studied with professional admiration and personal despair. Ships departed American ports daily, carrying millions of tons of supplies. Liberty ships mass-produced at rates Germany couldn't fathom. Holds filled with everything from Sherman tanks to Hershey bars. Upon reaching British or French ports, supplies moved through distribution networks that seemed to operate outside normal war constraints. Hauptmann Erich Weiss, a logistics officer captured in France, later described his interrogation by American intelligence. They asked about German supply routes, depot locations, distribution challenges. When he explained the system, the delays, the shortages, constant improvisations, they seemed genuinely puzzled. One officer asked how they maintained regular cigarette distribution. Weiss laughed and said they didn't. The officer looked at him with pity, not triumph. The Red Ball Express, the famous American supply line running from Normandy to the advancing front, carried combat supplies and comfort items with equal priority. Operating from August 25 to November 16, 1944, this 81-day achievement moved 12,193 tons of supplies over routes extending up to 750 miles one way. At their peak, nearly 6,000 vehicles rolled forward across European roads simultaneously. 3/4 of the 23,000 drivers behind those wheels were African-American soldiers, serving in units kept strictly segregated despite their essential work. On August 29, 1944 alone, this massive operation transported an astounding 12,000 tons of supplies in a single day. That was their record. By comparison, when German supply trucks ran at all, fuel remained desperately scarce. They moved cautiously, seldom, carrying only the barest necessities. Ammunition, medical kits, nothing else. Driving for the Red Ball Express, Lieutenant Robert Mason described the strange logic of their loading operations. We'd arrive at a forward position and begin unloading. Ammunition crates went down right beside cigarette cartons and candy boxes. Same speed, same careful attention to everything. The quartermaster's people treated chocolate bars with the identical urgency they gave bullets. Both were weapons, really. Both helped win the war. When winter came, that 18 months later, the difference between what American soldiers received and what their German counterparts had became almost unimaginably cruel. On December 16, 1944, Germany threw everything remaining into their last major offensive. Over 200,000 troops pushed through the Ardennes, hoping to split Allied forces and reverse their fortunes. The timing seemed desperate, but the operation nearly worked. Yet something unexpected slowed the German advance significantly. When German soldiers overran American positions, they found something more compelling than military strategy. They found food. Gaffreit Friedrich Bauer, moving forward with one of the SS Panzer divisions, left a remarkable account of what his unit discovered. We broke through an American field kitchen. Coffee, real coffee, still steaming in the pots. Cases of K-rations, each one containing cigarettes, chocolate, everything. Fresh bread was there too, canned fruit. We ate until our stomachs hurt. We filled our pockets with cigarettes. Then we kept advancing. But my squad leader spoke what all of us were thinking. "We're not defeating them," he said. "We're raiding their supply depot." Entire companies paused their offensive. They stopped fighting to feast. The psychological blow of that sight never quite wore off. German soldiers faced an awful realization. Americans could lose mountains of supplies and barely register the loss. Meanwhile, their own army couldn't feed them adequately. An older soldier wrote of finding an abandoned American truck knocked out by artillery fire. The driver lay dead nearby. The cargo had spilled everywhere: cigarettes, chocolate, coffee, tins of food scattered across the ground. We descended on it like starving animals. Grown men, soldiers with 5 years of combat experience, fought each other over candy bars. That dead American driver had more cigarettes in his single pocket than I had seen in half a year of service. American soldiers trapped in Bastonia faced encirclement. German forces surrounded them completely. Yet supplies reached them through the air. The packages that arrived contained more than ammunition and medical supplies. They held cigarettes and chocolate. While German forces tightened their siege, American troops smoked openly, casually, abundance personified. German soldiers around them scrounged for their last cigarettes. When German soldiers eventually surrendered, that shock continued. American prisoner camps provided German captives with more cigarettes and better food than they'd received as active soldiers fighting for their homeland. Former Wehrmacht officers struggled to comprehend this generosity. For minds shaped by scarcity, it was incomprehensible. Unteroffizier Wolfgang Meyer described his opening days in captivity. Americans distributed 5 cigarettes to each prisoner daily, only one less than what our military rations theoretically included, though we never received those rations. They apologized that chocolate came only twice per week. Apologized. We hadn't seen chocolate in 2 years. These Americans apologized for giving enemy prisoners chocolate twice per week. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, prisoners were reclassified as disarmed enemy forces. That technical change allowed their treatment to differ from Geneva Convention requirements. Yet remarkably, they still ate better in captivity than they'd eaten as soldiers. One former prisoner's weight climbed from 128 pounds to 185 pounds while imprisoned. Another wrote about choosing between ice cream and Coca-Cola at Fort Lewis in 1944. Those weren't even available to American civilians because of rationing, yet German prisoners could choose between them. Captive soldiers wrote home. Their letters, carefully read by military censors, carried messages that undermined Nazi propaganda more powerfully than any radio broadcast. "We eat better as prisoners than as soldiers," one wrote. "The Americans possess such abundance, they can afford to be kind to their enemies," wrote another. Those prisoners understood what their people back home did not yet comprehend. The war had already been lost. American industrial capacity had ensured it. German civilians faced a different horror entirely. Cigarette rations for civilian consumption had dropped to 3 per day by 1944, then 2. Then they vanished. Women younger than 25 and older than 55 received no tobacco rations whatsoever. Chocolate disappeared from civilian life completely, reserved only for the Nazi elite. By the closing year, urban residents survived on somewhere between 1,600 and 1,700 calories daily, depending on which region they inhabited. Gaffreit Hermann Wolf received a letter from his wife in Berlin. She wrote of their son, "Little Klaus keeps asking when Papa will bring chocolate home. I tell him after the war. He asks when that will be. I cannot answer him." She described what civilian life had become. "We received our cigarette ration this week, 4 cigarettes for 7 days. I traded them for a 1/4 kilogram of potatoes." American soldiers, by contrast, sent gifts home. Millions of packages traveled through the postal system. Soldiers mailed chocolate and cigarettes to their families, luxuries that German civilians couldn't even imagine acquiring. Private First Class Tommy Rodriguez wrote to his mother in Texas, "Sending you some German money as souvenirs and several chocolate bars. Don't worry about us. We get plenty here. Trade the cigarettes I'm including to Dad for something nice for yourself." The sheer casual abundance would have appeared like fantasy to German families. Behind the chocolate and cigarettes lay a terrifying truth. American factories produced both B-17 bombers and chocolate bars simultaneously. The same efficiency that built Liberty ships packaged cigarettes. The same organizational genius that coordinated D-Day coordinated distribution of comfort items. By 1944, American military production had reached incomprehensible levels. 290 billion cigarettes annually for military purposes. 3 billion chocolate bars from Hershey alone. 11 billion individual K-ration units. 500 million pounds of coffee. 100 million pounds of chewing gum. Germany's entire economy couldn't match American comfort item production, let alone their weapons manufacturing. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, captured and interrogated after the war, admitted something that haunted him. "We calculated divisions, we calculated tanks, we calculated aircraft. We should have calculated cigarettes and chocolate bars instead." Those told the truth. America could wage war and barely notice. We couldn't feed our soldiers and civilians simultaneously. American military psychologists had quantified morale. Their studies revealed that soldiers with regular cigarette access performed 15% better in combat. Chocolate consumption reduced combat fatigue measurably. Quartermaster officers classified comfort items as force multipliers, not luxuries. The numbers proved it. Major David Eisenstadt, a military psychologist, documented this understanding in a 1945 report. "A soldier who knows tomorrow's ration includes cigarettes and chocolate fights with different conviction than one who doubts it. He believes in a system that values his well-being. That belief creates combat effectiveness that transcends the items themselves." German soldiers increasingly grasped what their own command did not seem to understand. The Wehrmacht demanded sacrifice without offering comfort. Every missing cigarette reminded soldiers their system viewed them as expendable. Lieutenant Friedrich Hoffmann wrote in his diary the contrast he witnessed. "The Americans fight knowing their country values their comfort. We fight knowing our country values only our sacrifice. They carry chocolate, we carry ideology." In the end, chocolate proved the stronger weapon. By early 1945, black market exchange rates revealed the truth of defeat. One American cigarette brought 5 German cigarettes. A Hershey bar purchased a Wehrmacht officer's dress dagger. A carton of Lucky Strikes could buy a Luger pistol. Soldiers traded their own military equipment for American comfort items, the ultimate statement about where their hopes resided. In occupied German towns, American soldiers became masters of a sort. Not through military force, but through simple generosity. GIs handing chocolate to children or cigarettes to elderly Germans accomplished more psychological victory than any battle. Unteroffizier Karl Zimmermann witnessed an American private give an entire K-ration to a German child. The boy had received more chocolate in that moment than he'd seen since 1940. The mother wept, not from shame, but from gratitude. This American, probably drafted from his factory, could afford charity that our officers never could imagine giving. Master Sergeant Bill Patterson, supply sergeant for the 29th Infantry Division, recorded everything in logs that survived. His accounts survive in the National Archives. In January 1945 in Belgium, he wrote that they distributed 45,000 cigarettes to the battalion in a single day. Boys complain about getting Philip Morris instead of Lucky Strikes, had to discard 200 chocolate bars that got wet. Regulations prevent distributing damaged comfort items. German prisoners watched them destroy perfectly good chocolate. One man cried. February brought different challenges. A supply truck struck a mine. 10,000 cigarettes and 500 pounds of chocolate were lost. Division headquarters assured me replacement shipment arrives tomorrow. No problem. We'll have more than we can possibly use. By March, after the Rhine crossing, they captured a German supply depot. Pathetic. Maybe 1,000 cigarettes, all French brands from 1940. No chocolate, no coffee, some sort of fake tea substitute. Their supply records show this was meant to support an entire regiment for a month. We distribute more than this daily to a single company. After the war, Dr. Werner Schreiber, a German chemist who worked on Reich's chocolate development, testified about their attempts to match American comfort items. We tried everything: roasted barley mixed with saccharin to approximate chocolate flavor, dried beet leaves to simulate tobacco. The results were worthless. American soldiers consumed real chocolate with 600 calories per bar. Our Earth brand chocolate contained 100 calories and tasted like sweetened dirt. They smoked Virginia tobacco. We smoked anything that would burn and produce smoke. Americans applied rigorous scientific methods to comfort items just as they did to weapons. Hershey employed food scientists who created heat-resistant chocolate. Tobacco companies perfected moisture-proof packaging. We Germans supposedly possessed scientific mastery and efficiency. We couldn't even provide our soldiers with edible chocolate or smokable cigarettes. Operation Varsity on March 24, 1945, demonstrated ultimate American supply supremacy. 16,677 paratroopers crossed the Rhine on that single day. 9,387 Americans from the 17th Airborne Division and 7,220 British from the 6th Airborne Division. Command specifically included extra cigarettes and chocolate bars for giving to German civilians. The operation represented not merely military conquest, but comfort item diplomacy. Private James MacArthur of the 17th Airborne remembered the briefing. We were told to carry extra chocolate for German children. Command said it would reduce civilian resistance. It worked. Kids who might have reported our positions asked for chocolate instead. Their mothers, desperate for anything, welcomed us for cigarettes. We conquered territory through Hershey bars. German defenders faced an overwhelming reality. American soldiers moved forward eating chocolate, smoking constantly, carelessly abundant. Volkssturm units, Germany's last-ditch militia, often included elderly men who hadn't seen chocolate since the 1930s and children born after chocolate vanished from civilian life. They faced Americans complaining about K-ration monotony. Obergefreiter Franz Müller wrote his final diary entry before surrendering. The Americans approach our position eating chocolate and smoking continuously. Always smoking. We have neither ammunition nor cigarettes. The war ended not today, but when they achieved sufficient abundance to eat chocolate during combat. That was our true defeat. The Ruhr Pocket's encirclement from April 1st through 18th, 1945, created the war's starkest supply contrast. When Allied pincers closed on April 1st near Lippstadt, 317,000 German soldiers found themselves trapped. Inside the pocket, they slowly starved. Outside, American forces maintained full supply lines, including regular comfort item distribution. General Lieutenant Fritz Bayerlein, commanding the defunct Panzer Lehr Division, later recalled negotiations with American forces. The American colonel offered me a cigarette during our surrender discussions. Actually, an entire pack. He told me I could keep it. That cigarette summarized everything. It had been nearly 2 years since I'd encountered a full cigarette pack. During our conversation, he chain-smoked relentlessly, crushing out cigarettes barely halfway through. Each crumpled butt told a story, more tobacco than my unit had glimpsed in months. American psychological warfare teams seized upon this stark inequality. They broadcast propaganda through loudspeakers across the lines. German soldiers are eating steaming meals with real coffee while you perish from hunger, the messages proclaimed. Every American infantryman carries cigarettes and chocolate. Lay down your weapons and eat tonight. The strategy resonated because German soldiers knew it was absolutely true. When the final capitulation came on April 18th, American forces accepted the surrender of precisely 317,000 prisoners, exceeding the total captured throughout the entire North African campaign. Hans-Peter Richter was just 12 years old in 1945, residing outside Frankfurt as American forces poured into the region. His later memoir provided haunting testimony to how civilians experienced the collapse. "The first GI I encountered was consuming chocolate as he strolled past," he recalled. He consumed it so casually, as though it were ordinary bread. My stomach ached with longing. I hadn't experienced chocolate since I was 7 years old. The soldier noticed me watching and extended half his bar. Half. That single portion contained more chocolate than my entire household had obtained in 5 years. I sprinted back home weeping, gripping the treasure as though I held pure gold. My mother carefully divided it into minuscule portions, ensuring every family member received a share. We savored each piece as though eating something sacred. My younger sister, born in 1942, tasted chocolate for the first time that evening. "Will victory always feel like this?" she asked innocently. Mother nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetheart, this is what triumph tastes like." We had experienced defeat, yet we were consuming American chocolate. The Americans had achieved victory without firing many bullets at all. The occupation strategy prioritized flooding German civilians with creature comforts. Truckloads of supplies heading back through supply lines returned filled with cigarettes and chocolate destined for distribution to the population. This deliberate, overwhelming generosity, something the German system, crippled by chronic shortages, could scarcely comprehend, deepened the psychological conquest. Throughout that summer of 1945, American soldiers distributed roughly 100 million cigarettes monthly to German men, women, and children. Entire German adults received official cigarette rations supplied through American military administration, quantities that surpassed what the Nazi government had provided since 1942. Children queued for chocolate handouts, experiencing material wealth beyond anything their parents had imagined during wartime. Colonel Frank Hawley, who administered American-controlled Berlin, observed in a report, "Our authority rested upon chocolate and cigarettes as surely as upon military occupation." Every German youngster tasting Hershey bars, every adult smoking American tobacco acknowledged the American victory and the wealth it represented. These small luxuries accomplished what no propaganda broadcast could: genuine recognition of defeat and acceptance of the new reality. Scholars examining American occupation policy discovered remarkable facts. The confectionery given away free to German youth in 1945 surpassed Germany's entire chocolate manufacturing capacity for the 3 preceding years combined. The cigarette rations distributed to German prisoners exceeded the total tobacco allocations German combat troops had received during the war's final 12 months. Ludwig Erhard, the economist who would later guide Germany's remarkable post-war recovery, studied the American supply infrastructure. "America defeated us not merely with weapons," he concluded, "but with overabundance. They possessed so much they could redistribute what we could never manufacture. Each American cigarette smoked by German lips, each chocolate bar held in German hands, transmitted a devastating message about economic systems and their failure." In 1985, at a gathering of the 82nd Airborne Division, a former German sergeant named Kurt Müller, now an American citizen, addressed his previous adversaries. "You conquered us with chocolate and cigarettes as effectively as with bullets and artillery. Every captured American ration pack demonstrated American productive power. You possessed such abundance, you could demonstrate kindness. We held so little, we could not sustain compassion. The moment I discovered American cigarettes on fallen paratroopers at Normandy, I recognized that Germany's fate was sealed. No nation capable of equipping every soldier with chocolate and cigarettes could possibly fall to a nation unable to provide these basics." The veterans responded with appreciation for the former opponent who had grasped warfare's fundamental reality. Abundance enables generosity, while deprivation necessitates cruelty. Researchers uncovered a handwritten letter in German military archives, written by Frau Elisabeth Hoffmann to her son, Lieutenant Paul Hoffmann, in March 1945. "Paul, American troops have occupied our town. They gave young Anna chocolate, genuine chocolate. She consumed it so rapidly she became ill. The American physician provided medicine and additional chocolate, instructing her to eat more slowly. Their chocolate supplies are so immense they distribute excess portions to sick German children. Your father exchanged his military decoration from the First War for cigarettes from American servicemen. They laughed and presented him entire cartons, remarking that his medal possessed greater value. They possess such riches they can find humor in it. We were taught they represented weakness and decadence. They embody neither. They possess resources beyond comprehension. The outcome was determined the instant they possessed sufficient wealth to extend compassion to their enemies. Lieutenant Hoffman never received his mother's words. He had surrendered 2 weeks prior, his unit exhausted of ammunition, provisions, and tobacco, in precisely that sequence of importance for maintaining morale. Later examination revealed the extraordinary scale of American comfort supply manufacturing throughout the war. Total military cigarettes produced between 1941 and 1945. 1.2 trillion units. Daily production peaked at 950 million cigarettes. Military personnel received annually 10,000 cigarettes per individual. Manufacturers supplied 45 distinct varieties. Military exchange prices held steady. 50 cents per carton, 5 cents per package. Regarding chocolate, Hershey produced 3 billion military specification bars. Manufacturing peaked at 24 million units weekly. Mars military products totaled 1.5 billion units. Annual military chocolate shipments reached 20 million pounds. Each soldier received 600 daily calories from chocolate products. During the identical interval, German production told a contrasting story. Total cigarettes, military and civilian combined, 175 billion. Military portion, 40 billion. Chocolate across all categories, 10 million pounds annually. Military chocolate, virtually non-existent after 1942. Tobacco production facilities, reduced to roughly one-third capacity by 1942. These statistics revealed what German soldiers had discovered in isolated positions throughout occupied Europe. America had prosecuted World War II while sustaining comfort standards that eclipsed Germany's peacetime living conditions. Prior to his suicide in April 1945, General Walter Model drafted an assessment he never transmitted. We interpreted suffering as fortitude, viewed deprivation as character building, considered comfort evidence of weakness. The Americans demonstrated our complete misunderstanding. Their forces fought with greater intensity precisely because comfort sustained morale. Our soldiers surrendered because only intensifying hardship faced them ahead. They constructed morale through material provision. We undermined it through systematic deprivation. Every American cigarette functioned as ammunition. Every chocolate bar served as ordnance. We lost to adversaries possessing sufficient wealth to remain comfortable while annihilating us. The mathematics revealed the entire conflict's narrative. Had every German soldier obtained his theoretically allocated 7 daily cigarettes, limited to 6 through actual rationing throughout the conflict, Germany would have required 13 billion cigarettes annually for military personnel alone. The nation's complete production for military and civilian purposes scarcely surpassed this total. America manufactured this quantity every 14 days exclusively for military distribution. Major Wilhelm Hoffmann, a Wehrmacht quartermaster captured in 1945, performed the impossible calculations. Achieving American cigarette distribution rates would have demanded quintuple production capacity while eliminating civilian allocations entirely. Matching American chocolate distribution proved mathematically impossible. It demanded cocoa volumes exceeding availability from regions under German control. When Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel affixed his signature to Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945, American commanders offered the defeated German delegation American cigarettes. The Prussian officer, proud, unbending, immediately accepted. In that moment, the entire conflict crystallized into pure clarity. Vanquished men gratefully receiving luxuries from victors who possessed such abundance they shared generously with adversaries. General Eisenhower's aide, Captain Harry Butcher, recorded the moment. The Germans smoked those American cigarettes like drowning individuals gasping for oxygen. Keitel secured 3 packs inside his uniform. These were figures who had controlled millions of troops, now reduced to desperately accumulating lucky strikes. If confirmation of total victory existed anywhere, it materialized in their unmistakable gratitude for American tobacco. 5 years following the war's conclusion, in 1950, a Hamburg schoolteacher posed a question to her students. What memory stayed with you most vividly as the fighting ended? 7-year-old Greta Müller, merely 2 years old when Americans arrived, raised her hand immediately. The chocolate rain. American soldiers threw chocolate from trucks like falling rain. We children pursued the trucks, collecting chocolate bars from the pavement. My brother said that moment marked when everything reversed, when chocolate descended instead of bombs. That evening, the teacher, Frau Hoffmann, confided to her journal, "The children remember American chocolate rather than German military defeat." Perhaps this reveals the conflict's deepest wisdom, that material abundance neutralizes ideological resistance, that creature comforts transcend sacrificial appeals, that nations capable of gifting chocolate to children of defeated enemies have already fundamentally triumphed. A peculiar irony emerged during post-war conversations with German personnel. Officers who had battled ferociously for National Socialism, who had endured unspeakable horrors across Eastern territories, who had maintained discipline against overwhelming opposition, identified the precise moment they comprehended inevitable defeat. Not when Allies established the Normandy beachhead, not when Soviet forces breached German borders, not when Allied aviation filled the skies with bombers. Rather, when they understood American troops possessed unlimited tobacco and chocolate, while they possessed neither. Within that realization lay the true war's message. Industrial manufacturing capacity, not racial mysticism, determined outcomes. General Osburst von Luck, among Rommel's most decorated commanders, synthesized this understanding in his published recollections. We imagined ourselves warrior philosopher kings destined for dominion through superior willpower and suffering. We encountered Democrats bearing chocolate, factory workers carrying more cigarettes than our command staff. We faced a nation so materially wealthy it squandered what we couldn't produce. Every lucky strike between American lips announced their triumph. Every absent cigarette between German fingers confirmed our collapse. The concluding statistical portrait illustrated what no propaganda could alter. American distribution, 1941 through 1945, 1.2 trillion cigarettes, 5 billion chocolate bars, 500 million pounds of coffee, 100 million pounds of chewing gum. Daily calories per soldier averaged 4,300. Expenditure on comfort supplies, $2.3 billion. German distribution during identical years. Approximately 35 billion cigarettes, negligible chocolate after 1942, only substitute coffee after 1941. Daily calories per soldier averaged 1,195. Comfort supplies received zero budget allocation. These numbers embodied what every German serviceman encountering Americans personally discovered. America had waged fundamentally different warfare. Soldiers anticipated luxuries and received them. Industrial might expressed itself through chocolate bars alongside bombers. Inevitable victory was assured by the nation capable of maintaining soldier satisfaction while fighting across two continents. The narrative of Wehrmacht soldiers receiving meager cigarette allowances while Americans possessed abundance in every ration pack represents more than simple supply imbalance. It recounts two incompatible systems in collision, with results determined not by courage or philosophical conviction, but by manufacturing capability. Every German soldier experiencing American material wealth, whether through captured supplies, prison camp rations, or occupation generosity, underwent identical transformation. They discovered they had confronted history's initial post-scarcity fighting force with depleted supplies and hollow expectations. Leadership had insisted racial destiny and determination would overcome material disadvantage. Instead, they encountered industrial civilizations whose capacity for provisioning millions of combat troops while conducting global conflict extended beyond mere military force. The chocolate and cigarettes symbolized profound underlying reality. America generated abundance because its structure manufactured wealth. Germany mandated suffering because its system produced scarcity. American infantrymen anticipated tobacco and chocolate because their nation could provide. German soldiers abandoned hope because their nation possessed nothing remaining to distribute. Ultimately, the war's resolution appeared not in strategic documents, but in production figures. Not through ideological debate, but through industrial output. Not via racial philosophy, but through candy bars and cigarette packs. That Wehrmacht soldier, preserving 6 daily cigarettes when obtainable, observing American troops discarding half-finished Lucky Strikes, witnessed the genuine equilibrium of forces. Americans carried chocolate in every ration because abundance permitted. Germans received ideology in every directive because nothing remained besides words. Chocolate superseded ideology. Abundance defeated deprivation. The nation maintaining material comfort for its personnel overwhelmed the nation rationing scarcity. The Wehrmacht soldiers receiving 6 daily cigarettes, when rationing permitted any at all, absorbed what their commanders never grasped. Contemporary industrial warfare favors nations capable of supplying comfort provisions alongside ammunition. Those chocolate bars and cigarette packs transcended mere indulgence. They represented daily declarations of approaching triumph, tangible evidence that American manufacturing could generate material wealth while German factories struggled to maintain adequacy. Every German survivor who consumed American chocolate, who smoked American tobacco, who witnessed American material abundance, understood the conflict's termination long before formal capitulation occurred. They possessed foreknowledge of coming realities, visions conjured by Hershey's sweetness and Lucky Strike aroma. This remained World War II's ultimate teaching, transcribed through chocolate and cigarettes. Triumph accrues to those commanding productive capacity to generate abundance, not those capable merely of demanding sacrifice. The Wehrmacht servicemen promised 6 cigarettes daily, often receiving substantially less, confronting Americans with chocolate in pocket and tobacco in hand, extracted this comprehension through each captured ration consumed.